Are you a businesswoman who is finding it challenging to get your ideas across and make a point? Welcome to Speakers Who Get Results with Elizabeth Bachman, a podcast dedicated to helping women get the visibility they want, whether making a speech or talking in a meeting. Every week, get valuable lessons from Elizabeth or learn from her roundtable conversations with experts and speakers on how to make a difference, not just a point. On to the show with your host, Elizabeth Bachman.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the regular Wednesday broadcast for Strategic Speaking for Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host, and I have the awesome Nicole Trick Steinbach as my guest today. Before we get started, let me remind you that if you're curious how your presentation skills are doing, where you're strong, you can take our free 4-minute quiz at speakforresultsquiz.com. And that's where you can see where your presentation skills are strong and where perhaps a little bit of support could get you the results you need and the recognition you deserve. So Nicole Steinbach, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here.
It's so exciting to hear my name said appropriately. That's the benefit of being married to Germans, right?
Yes. Right. Yeah, just learn that Elizabeth. I'm so used to being Elisabeth instead of Elizabeth. Yes. So there are a lot of Nicoles in both languages. Nicole Trick Steinbach is the international bravery coach for women in technology. She's a former tech exec, and she's worked in over 25 countries and is at home both in the US and Germany. Nicole coaches women in tech all over the world to succeed in their career, earning more money and creating more opportunities with less stress and more fun. She also has a podcast called Celebrate Brave, which is deep into season 2. So Nicole, before I get into the questions for women in tech, the specific questions, if you were to have a dream interview, somebody you wouldn't normally be able to get to, who would you interview? What would you ask them? And who should be listening?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So this one's actually easy for me because it's Angela Merkel, hands down. So
former Chancellor of Germany.
That is true. So when I first moved to Germany, she was not yet the chancellor. And so I got to experience her until the last few years of when she was actually in the position of power. And one of the things that impresses me so much about her is that she makes decisions based on her values. Mm-hmm. And this can be seen in repeating outfits, which why is that still a thing? It's still a thing. She wears what she wants.
Well, right? And by repeating outfits, you're talking about the assumption that women in public view, public persons, shall we say, women need to have a new outfit every time.
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time. And it has to fit this certain idea of what someone somewhere who doesn't exist, that someone somewhere, but what that someone somewhere that's imaginary assumes a woman in power has, and it's never repeated. And to the point where she was called out numerous times. I believe she was even asked about it at a serious meeting where there were real conversations to be had. And a reporter asked, like, what do you think about this noise around you repeating your outfits? And she was like, we have better things to talk about. Like, yes.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then, so that's like the fun way to look at it. I was also living in Germany during what people are now calling the refugee crisis of 2013. And I saw her make value-based decisions that she stood for when she was running multiple times and that she was voted into power. Her party was voted into power, and expect the blowback.
Yeah.
Right. And
she decided to open Germany's borders to refugees from Syria.
And Eritrea and
Eritrea,
many places in the world that are really suffering, right? And my small town, we were about 20,000 people. And by 6 to 8 months, we were 10% refugee population, right?
Yep.
Of course, there was concern. Of course, there was blowback, right? Different perspectives of what that was going to mean, right? Because it's a multi-party, multi-identity society. And, she assumed that there was blowback. She spoke to the blowback, and she continued to repeat over and over again the value. She brought in the history of her own country, and more importantly, the future that we're headed into with climate change refugees, economic refugees, etc., and navigated it without apologizing for her beliefs, her choices, and what she had run on in the first place. So my question would be, and I would want just generations and generations of women from all over the world in the front, and I would want generations and generations of men in the back. I would want them to experience it, but I would want the focus to be on women. And my main question would be, how did you daily decide? What were you thinking? What were you feeling? Who did you spend time with? Where you daily chose again and again and again your core values, and yet remained open for conversation and learning.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, I want to be in that audience to hear her say that. Yeah. Absolutely. I keep hoping that she's going to come hiking in our village in the Alps, and I'll just bump into her at the cafe and then say, oh, hello. I probably couldn't get past her bodyguards, but wouldn't that be fun? Bump into her on the path and just say, I'm a huge fan of yours.
Yes.
So, yes.
Yes. Let's invite her. Let's just make it happen.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, that actually leads me to my first major question, which is, Angela Merkel is a great example of being brave.
Yes.
And your brand is brave.
Yes.
What does that mean to you? Why did you choose that word?
Oh, okay. I'm going to start with the second part first.
Okay.
I chose brave because it's so hard for me. So building my brave, learning to use my voice, learning to use my height. I'm quite tall. Learning to use the intelligence, the curiosity that I have, choosing, in my bio, it talks about 25 countries. Most of those were solo. I traveled by myself. I'm from a welfare family in Southern Ohio. Going abroad was strange, but then traveling all by myself. And it took a lot of commitment and dedication to choose to do those things. And I inherently learned, and I had an incredible teacher and then a therapist and then an amazing coach who helped me realize that it wasn't about the doing, it was about how I needed to feel. Like, okay, here we go. We're going to be brave again. Oh man. Right.
Yeah.
And taking up the space. Right. So that's why brave, because, and it was actually my husband who was the one who crystallized it for me. I was invited to speak at an incredible organization, and I didn't want to roll in with the theory of personal change. Like that just sounded really boring. And he's like, well, you always talk about being brave, like just make it brave. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, that's what we're going to do. Right.
Yeah.
And the definition of brave that I'm talking about, just from the examples, right? These are things that go counter, but could actually complement how many societies think about brave, right? So brave soldiers, brave fire people, brave whatever, right? And it's like these huge moments of diving into a burning building or leaping from something. It's these superhero movies, and that is definitely a form of brave. But it's also asking the question, having the bravery in a meeting to say, excuse me, you said this, and that wasn't quite clear for me. Could you clarify? Negotiating. They offer you 220 and you're like, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I think we need to review my value. right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm actually worth this, or I'm expecting this, right? It's choosing to have a family or not,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's choosing. So as you know, you and I especially, right? We have these global lives. So we could be available to everyone all the time,
We could.
right?
Yes.
But we don't. And that's brave, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, when it comes down to that form of brave, it's like clear, you know what you want,
Mm-hmm.
momentum, you do the things and you feel the things. We
Mm-hmm.
forget often that we need to feel, right? And the third thing is accountability, which I'm summing up right now in a question, which is, who do you actually want to be?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Angela Merkel, she wants to be the woman who stood in her values.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you actually want to be? And when we answer that question and then we choose and then we move forward, even if building brave is hard, we still do it. And we do it incrementally over time. And it just changes everything. So I help women like you, I help women enjoy their careers, and it changes everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I love about what you're saying is when you talk about, so I've heard you several times and, and I've known you for a while. So I really wanted to get you on the show.
Thank you.
Is doing it in small steps.
Yes.
The bravery of that one question, the bravery of that little thing.
Yes.
Because so much of, what I do is I help people be heard. At women who are not being listened to, help them be heard. And it's a whole bunch of little tiny things, dropping seeds, planting seeds, to seeding your value with stories and such, where slowly but surely you notice, oh, they're actually paying attention these days.
Mm-hmm.
I wish it could be an overnight revelation.
Yeah.
Just like if you and I could each bottle what we do and have it just take a pill and you've got it, we'd be bazillionaires.
And so would all the women we help, which would be the best part.
Yes, exactly. If we could just do it, I want to create that magic elixir, and then you just drink that little bottle and you'll be fine. But unfortunately, no, you've got to do it little by little.
Little by little. And that's like the best news as well. So I remember an early conversation that we had, and you were like, can I make a suggestion? And you just offered a small tweak, I think to like the verb form I was using, or the structure of my noun. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I was like, whoa, yeah, that's going to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And it's those small things, and then building on top of that is exactly the truth. Yeah.
I love that. You talk about clarity, momentum, and accountability.
Yeah.
But you have a really cool metaphor about dentists and kindergartners and, so forth. Could you explain that to us?
Yeah. Absolutely. So like I said, it's a lot of fun, right? So if we're not having fun, let's try something else. Let's shift how we're thinking about it. And so, the clarity piece of my Build Your Brave framework, I call it Tell It to Your Dentist. And this is from the inspiration. I grew up with some healthcare lack in the United States, right? And so I have some teething. That means that in my travels to 25 countries, I think I went to like 7 dentists in different countries. And I don't know, it's probably me. Let's just be real. Like, I love real conversation, but I always have a dentist who asks me interesting questions that I want to answer. So I have to be so clear and so specific that when I'm in the back of the chair, and the hand is in and the tool is in, and then they say, why does your work matter? I have to be able to answer. Right?
Yes.
And so that's why I call it Tell It to Your Dentist, because that's the conciseness that you have to have. We think about these CEOs and they're always on for a sound bite. That sound bite always sounds a little bit different, but they know exactly what they're there to do. And we have to have that clarity as the CEOs for our goals and our results.
That's actually a big part of what, one of the things, the sound bites are part of what I talk is, what are your golden nuggets? What are the little things that you could say, the 1 minute story, or just, why does it matter? In the days when we went to in-person networking events, we all had a 30-second intro of what you do, but you could have lots of those.
Yeah.
And you put them together to make a speech, or you just drop them in terms of reminding people about your success, things like that. The clarity of telling it to the dentist. Actually, I had a lot of dental work done by an Italian dentist and his team, and I'm fluent in Italian, so I could talk to them in Italian, but they said, should we do Italian or English? And I said, talk to me in English, because it will force you to slow down.
Exactly.
Because if I said talk Italian, they would be speaking rapid Italian and probably dialect to each other. And I would be going, huh, what? So I just said, please talk to me in English, because it'll make you slow down enough that you'll actually explain something.
Exactly. We'll have to swap Italian hospital stories.
Oh gosh.
Very funny.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you've got the dentist, the clarity, tell it as if you're talking to a dentist who's got her hand in your mouth. Where does the kindergartner part come in?
Yes. Okay. So part 2, momentum. I call it experience it like a kindergartner. And
for our international listeners, most of our international learners are in Germany, so kindergarten, you understand, but like a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old.
Yeah. So, they're talking, they're moving, they're practicing their independence, they're experiencing the world. And they tend to, and actually adults do this as well, right? We tend to approach new situations, new opportunities, new obstacles in one of 2 ways. We either learn and then we take an action, or we act and then we learn from the action, right? And my kiddos, I have one of each. So I love to talk about the monkey bars, especially in kindergarten, because it feels so big, right? They can't touch
those are the big bars that you can climb on and like a monkey.
Swing like a monkey. So you have to you have a hold of both, but you have to release one and shift yourself forward to get the next one. And one of my children just runs in, climbs up the little ladder, flings herself forward, maybe gets 1, maybe gets 2, and always will fall down, right?
Yeah.
And then she has her breath of feelings, right? Experience. We've got to feel things. Whereas my other child will cautiously walk up and check it out and see what's working and what's not working. He's like totally soaking it in. And then he purposefully climbs up the little ladder and he does his thing. He does 1, he does 2, and then he falls down. And he has had that experience, and the loop starts to have, right? They're joyful, they're sad, they're frustrated, they're excited, right? But a kindergartner, generally speaking, a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, we expect them to have feelings and show them.
Yes.
Why do adults not? And that's the secret. We've been taught a lie that it's just about what we do. And what we do is important. We do create output. But when we create an outcome, and you talk to this, is when we can, we can connect into the emotional experience of the person across from us. Create those memorable moments. We hand them a shiny gold nugget and not one that they have to try to figure out what's going on. We can only do that when we are experiencing the feelings as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And then what's the third one?
Own it like a boss.
Own it like a boss. Okay.
Like a boss. And this is accountability. And it's so fun because a lot of people are like, oh, I love this part. I love telling other people what to do. And I'm like, fair. I'm a bossy older sister myself.
Me too. Yes.
It's about accountability in here, in my
Yes.
head and in my heart and with my hands. Choosing who I want to become and then
Mhm.
following through. What do I believe? What do I think about? What kind of music do I listen to? If I want to be, many people who come to me, they want to have that first executive role. They're not yet in an executive role. They want to have that first one. Like, okay, when you're an executive, what do you do? What do you wear? What questions do you ask? How do you listen? Who's your mentor, right? And that's the accountability of seeing where you're going and keeping yourself going there.
Mhm.
And honestly, that's where I spend the vast majority of the time with my clients, because we have this strange idea, right? Einstein very, very clearly said, and I love the description, insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
Yeah.
What got you to a senior level, what made you a successful, let's just start smaller, right? What made you a successful student is not going to make you successful in the career world. You got to change. You got to
Mhm.
grow.
Yeah.
And if you're conscious about where you're going, when you get there, you actually like who you are and you have fun on your way there.
Yes.
As opposed to, and we've talked about this a little bit, right? We get some people, and this was definitely me 100%. I got so into, I'm going to cross 6 figures. I'm going to have people below me. I'm going to travel that place. And I got there and I was not a pleasant person. I was unhappy. I literally got mandated coaching because I was such a disaster to work with.
So they made you get coaching. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my first experience with
Thank
coaching.
goodness. Yeah.
Changed my entire life. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. What's unique about being a woman in tech in 2022?
Oh, wow. In 2022, we have never had more opportunity, ever. So that is true for men. So, the way I like to really describe it, because we get lost in systems of power. The current identity that makes the vast majority of decisions, from investment all the way into, when we retire, we sunset technology, is the minority of a minority of a minority.
Yep.
Right? A straight white man is like this tiny little percentage of the world. And when people say, oh, I don't like tech, I'm not a tech person, like, ugh, right? My answer is, yeah, you don't want to think like a straight white dude. I get that. Totally understand. And right now, as tech is exploding, as every industry understands that its entire spine is tech.
Yeah.
Supply chain, military, auto, air, everything is tech. Right when people are understanding that every single element of what we do is growing by leaps and bounds. And it's right at a point in time when mass areas of the world are getting online because of the investments coming primarily out of China, right? We think about 5G, we think about the infrastructure in Africa. So there's this incredible opportunity for generations to come into Web 2.0. And the feedback is, that doesn't work for me. So what do these tech companies, startup all the way to the giants, need? They need different identities.
Right.
So right now on the market, especially for these companies who are truly implementing diverse hiring practices, meaning that they're short panels, they're taking names off of resumes, etc. They're doing multiple, I think they're called 90-degree feedback cycles, right? So it's not just one person, but multiple people. Women are being offered more positions than men right now, globally. Of course, there are women coming into tech as well, globally.
Yeah.
In addition to that, we can get all the monies. Negotiate.
Yeah.
Negotiate. That's what's special in 2022.
Yeah. And one of the things I really love about that is, it's really something actually that the pandemic has done for us, to us. So many people working from home.
Yes.
For those of us who are able to work from home, has made people really question the old way of doing it. And working in tech doesn't necessarily mean you're just coding. You're not sitting at your computer. Right? There's massive organizations with lots and lots of parts.
Yes.
Where either men or women will be just fine. Doesn't really matter. You don't have to be an engineer. If you are an engineer, wonderful.
Yep.
But I think it started with the Me Too movement and women claiming their power. But then I've had several conversations in the last several days about companies that are really trying to do it right. And they're appointing women of color.
Yes.
And really trying to do the right thing. And over, it's been, in the last 2 years. It's in the last 2 years. Yes, we've really changed in the last year because there was a global disruption of the status quo.
Yes.
Everything changed and we had to rethink, how do we survive?
Yeah.
And what matters?
Yeah. And people created these systems we live in. So people can create a different one.
That's true.
That's up to us.
True.
Yeah, I do believe very strongly that regulation is having a very powerful impact. We think about the S&P and their currently voluntary reporting of gender stats. We think about California and the demand to have more gender representation. We think about the EU and the reporting that's voluntary there, right? We have some noise happening in various places of APJ as well. The regulation does matter.
Right. For our international listeners, APJ is what?
Asia Pacific and Japan.
Right.
So Australia would be in there. Tonga would be in there. India is often part of that as well.
Yeah. And when you're talking about diversity and equity, also because there are studies that show that companies with diverse leadership, diverse voices, make better profits.
Yes.
Yeah. And so my question for you, so here's the core of what I do is helping individuals who say, yes, here's the trend, and I'm still not being listened to because it all comes down to people.
Yeah.
So how do you address that? Yes, we're having a global opening. And I do have to say that the global opening for women does bring a global opening. It comes for white women first.
Yeah.
Just because that is the easiest for companies to swallow.
For white men to swallow, yeah.
White men to swallow, yes. And but that as women, most of us are then going to turn around and open the door for somebody else.
That is the hope. Now, white women do not have the best historical record for that, but
there is a movement
there. Yes.
There's a movement to turn around and help others.
Yeah.
And it's not that men don't do that. It's just, I think that women consciously look wider because we're used to not being heard,
Well, yeah. And I think that there is a reckoning, I definitely believe that for parts of my life, I misunderstood, not consciously, but like in the air, like, oh, I'm closer to power. And if I disrupt that power, I will lose power, right?
Yes.
Which in truth is, and we see this with Elizabeth Holmes, right? I'm not defending her actions in any way, shape, or form, but we all know that nonsense is happening all the time in health tech. We know that. Med tech has a lot of problems, but one person has gone down. One
woman.
Right? One white woman.
Who
so being close
built
to
herself
power,
up. Yep.
Yes. Is not power.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, okay, so to answer your really concrete question, one of the things, there's two things that I have found are very powerful for different ways people are saying, I'm not heard, or because I'm not heard, I'm overworked, or because I'm not heard, I'm underpaid, or whatever the case may be. The first one that's really, I think it makes a lot of sense, is document exactly what your role is supposed to be, right? Listen very carefully for what's actually being said and what's actually being done, and have a clarifying, sometimes it's called a confrontational conversation with your manager. It doesn't have to be, or your
Yeah.
PM or your scrum manager or whatever. But have a clarifying conversation. I understand this. This is actually reality. What's really going on with this gap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just helping people understand the lay of the land as it actually is
Mm-hmm.
frequently leads to more authority inside of meetings.
Yes.
Right. The other thing, and I know that you talk about this a lot, like creating allyship before you even walk into a meeting. Hey, I'm going to pitch this. Can you second my voice?
Yes.
Things
Exactly.
like that, like 100%. Let's do that. The other thing that's been really powerful for a number of particularly my senior women who have families or are in caregiving roles for elders or whatever the case may be. How are you actually using your time? Because if you are harried and frustrated and stressed and annoyed and like doing 3 things at once, people don't listen to you. Why should they?
Right. Yeah.
Do less. Yeah.
Do less. Do less. Delegate.
Give people the opportunity to do the job that they want to do.
Yep. Yep. For a recovering perfectionist myself, and a bit of a control freak, I was paid to direct people for many years because, and when I switched from acting to directing, my younger sisters, I'm the oldest, said, well, yeah, duh, you boss everyone around anyway. You might as well give up and get paid for it. So I found a business where I was paid to boss people around, and to tell people what to do. It's an interesting talent. Can't even remember where I was going with this, but
good. I love it.
But delegate.
Yeah.
Let people do it. Even if you could do it better, they need that your learning experience. And perhaps their way of doing it is not necessarily your way of doing it.
And there was a time that you couldn't do it well because you had to learn how to do it. So give other
and you had to make mistakes and you had to say, okay, that didn't work. Let me try it another way.
Yeah. Yes. And then 2 other things that instantly come to mind are the power of silence. The power of silence is brilliant, right? And also feel free to repeat yourself.
Yes.
As I just said.
Yes.
Just want to make sure this gets heard.
Yeah, right. Say it a couple of times.
And one aspect of diversity that we're definitely experiencing over Zoom, and at first this wasn't the case, but we're starting to see really interesting data models coming out of it, is that extroverts and introverts have a more playing field and
more even setting,
right?
Yeah.
More even playing field. Yeah. Which I think is really powerful. So utilizing the chat, utilizing, the physical movements, utilizing the mute button intentionally, right? Utilizing calling on people. That's another way to make sure that you're heard, but also you're positively controlling a quote unquote uncontrolled situation, right?
Yeah.
So we can literally say, Elizabeth, it looks like you have something to say about that.
Yes. Right.
And then, person over here is not called
on. Yes, exactly. Nicole, this has been awesome and so much fun to have you on here. I love knowing you. It's really nice.
I feel the same way. You send the best postcards, by the way.
Okay. You're one of the few people who understands the bilingual jokes. That's why. How can we find out more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have my podcast, Celebrate Brave. It has awesome conversations with women currently in tech roles, sharing their brave stories. Because one of the biggest pains that came out in 2019 report, Women in Tech, was that we feel lonely. We don't have the stories of each other. So I'm doing that, as well as tips and tricks for how to have a freaking amazing career and earn the money while you're having fun. And then I have my website, which is tricksteinbach.com. And I love LinkedIn. I have a lot of fun over there. So come on and join the party. Don't follow me. Just connect with me. I am super excited to be connected.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. This has been the weekly broadcast of Strategic Speaking for Results. My guest was the wonderful Nicole Trick Steinbach, and it is 3 separate words. I had to ask, are you a T or an S? She's filed under S, if you have to know. So Nicole Trick Steinbach. And thank you so much for joining us, everybody. I will see you on the next one.
Bye. Thank you.
We have just concluded another great episode of Speakers Who Get Results with your host, Elizabeth Bachman. If you got value from today's episode, please feel free to share us with your friends and colleagues. You may also visit elizabethbachman.com for additional resources. Be sure to tune in every week for new episodes, and thanks for tuning in.